Great.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And thank you to Chund for the LinkedIn message, starting off that conversation. So it really is a pleasure to come and present to you. I'm actually glad this is online because I'm currently 8 months pregnant. So I'm really pleased that we can do these things virtually. So yes, I appreciate that it's online. Um, so what I will do today is I'm going to talk to you through kind of three different elements of student engagement. So as you know, my name is Gemma. I am a principal lecturer in forensic psychology. So I am based in the School of Humanities and Social Science at Brighton University. And I teach as part of the bigger sort of psychology team there. My other role, my other leadership role is student engagement lead. Now, this is a role that came into place, I'd say, about 4 years ago. So later on in the talk, I'll tell you how that works in principle, the sort of responsibilities we have in that role, and then we'll kind of take it from there. I'm really happy to answer questions at the end. So originally I was given 20 minutes to give the talk, but I'll do a little bit longer as I'm the only speaker today. But you've got loads of time for questions at the end. And feel free to put any in the chat just as I'm going through the presentation, and I'll get to them at the end. Okay, so what I thought I'd do is I split the talk into three. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my teaching. So student engagement is really important for my kind of teaching philosophy. So as someone who teaches forensic psychology, it's an incredibly sensitive topic. So I have to think really carefully about how I'm sort of going to deliver the content in a sensitive manner, how students will engage with that content. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. And then I'll move on to some funded research that myself and a colleague, Dr. Catherine McConnell, we've literally just finished at Brighton, looking at something called eduthons. It's a very strange terminology. It's a play on hackathons, which I'll say a little bit about. And that involves collaboration with students. And then I'll end the talk talking about the student engagement activities that we're doing at Brighton, which have been incredibly successful. And again, I'm very happy to answer more questions about that. I've realised the picture on that slide makes it look like I'm teaching an empty room, which is not the case at all. This picture I took just after the COVID pandemic. So this was the first time after COVID I was back in the lecture room, and I was just so excited not to teach online anymore. So that's why I looked delighted. Students did turn up, I promise. There were people there. Okay, so in terms of my teaching philosophy, so there's four things that I really focus on in terms of engagement. So those are technology, connection, real world tasks, and different learning styles. I'd say that I'm pretty reflective in my teaching. So, I really look back to see what things work, what don't work, what I want to replicate in other modules. So these are the things that are kind of my main focus at the moment. So I'll take you through each one. So we're very lucky at Brighton that we have a fantastic new building. So we moved campuses last year and we got a new building and new psychology labs. And within those psychology labs, we've got really state-of-the-art technology and equipment. So I successfully got an internal grant, I think it was 2 years ago. So we got just over £80,000 to get sort of virtual reality equipment, eye trackers, it's really, really cool technology that we can use with our students. So on the slide there, we've got a student using our virtual reality kit, which they absolutely love. I like it, but it does make me feel a little bit sick after a while, but they absolutely adore it. So we do all different types of research with the virtual reality. We can do things like meditation, looking at different sort of applications for people who may be agoraphobic or maybe anxious about things. But we also have really fun stuff like zombies chasing us and roller coasters. So it's a whole range of different things we can do. So we try to embed the technology into our teaching and into our open days and applicant days. So it's a really nice way to showcase what we do in the department. But not everyone has access to this technology. So within my lectures and seminars, I will go to use things like Padlet, which some of you might have heard of and might use yourself. Also a big fan of podcasts and any form of media to really emphasize the subjects that I'm teaching. So I'll give you a few examples of the Padlets later on in the presentation. In terms of connections, so I realise when I'm teaching now that I'm not as young as I used to be, and I realise that some of the examples I give in lectures are a bit outdated. So, for example, I gave a lecture last week on jury decision making, and I was referring to the O.J. Simpson case, and I realised most of my students weren't even born back in 1995. So I guess one of the things I do is try to give really relatable examples in my teaching. So I look to see what the students are watching, what sort of news stories are in the media. I get them to recommend things as well. So making that sort of relatability can make applying what can be quite dry psychology theory to lectures and to seminars. Because we do forensics, we're really keen to see what sort of crime trends are going on, not just in the UK, but globally. So I tend to have students keep an eye on the news. They sometimes bring the Metro newspaper into me with a headline going, oh, look, we saw this today, and we'll embed that in a conversation. Another thing that works really well is we have an alumni, I'm sure Brunel does as well, and we invite students back to speak to our current students. So one thing that we did last year was bring back one of my students who graduated in 2018. So she basically did the degree, she did the psychology degree, and afterwards she did the graduate detective programme. So she was paid to be trained and fast-tracked into the police. Which the students find very exciting. So she comes back and she speaks to them about her sort of career, how she got into policing, where she is now. And the students can just really connect to that. They love hearing from their peers about the sort of, career journeys they've been on, what they could potentially do with their psychology degree. And that's something that we're going to maintain within our modules. So that connectivity, I think, is really important. The next thing is we try to do real world situations within our modules. So we try to think of, okay, what are the sort of skills and graduate attributes that students might need going into the workplace? And how can we kind of mimic some of those within our modules? So as a forensic module, one of the things that we do is we get students to become a real life jury. So we get them to become a mock jury, we give them a case, we get them to deliberate it. And the idea is that they use their critical thinking to take all the theory and research from the lecture that I've just given and apply it to being on a jury and actually seeing how difficult it is 12 people deciding the fate of someone. So that is incredibly effective. We do apprentice style tasks where we'll set a brief to the students, get them to split into different groups. They'll assign a project manager and they'll present something back to the class. So that works really, really well in terms of applying skills to the work that they're doing. And then the final thing that I'm really conscious of, probably more so in the last couple of years, is different learning styles. So I've had feedback from neurodiverse students who say they really like the way I teach, because I teach in a kind of, I'd say, storytelling way. So I try to take the kind of what can be dry theory and I sort of teach it in a way where I'm telling stories about cases. I try to incorporate more breaks into lectures based on feedback from students. I try not to have too much text on my slides or make it too overwhelming an environment. And I would always try out new things as well. So something I discovered recently is something called sketch notes. So what that essentially is we basically, the students, we tell them not to take notes for the first half of the lecture. And then when it comes to the break, we ask them just to do a couple of little doodles or little kind of key words that represent the sort of 6 key things they've learned from that first bit of the lecture. Now, I do tell students that you don't have to be Picasso to do this. You don't have to be a good artist. You don't have to do anything like that. But they just get a bit of paper, they fold it into 6 squares, and then they just draw out what they want to remember from the lecture. And it's such a good way of not overwhelming yourself during the lecture by trying to write down every single thing the lecturer is saying. I have students that do that, and I just think they're missing so much of the content because they're panicking to write everything down. So this is just another kind of visual way to get information down in a very simplistic way, quite frankly, but it works. When students go back to their notes, they're like, oh, I remember why I did that. I remember why I drew that little doodle. So that's a really fantastic way to get students to take information in more effectively. Okay, so the sort of lectures I do, these are the main psychology topics I teach, with forensic being the top one, but I also do cyber psychology and cognitive. We can have anything from 100 to 300 students. We've got 4 psychology courses, and our lectures tend to be 2 hours. So I have to consider a number of things when I'm, designing my lectures. The majority of my topics are sensitive. And so what we will do is probably similar to things that the other places do. We will obviously upload the slides 48 hours in advance. I'll think really carefully how I'm going to present that sensitive information. We'll do a bit of a trigger warning in advance so people know what's coming up. But I'll also acknowledge that in order to teach these specific subjects, I don't want to shy away completely from the content. So we just make sure it's a safe space for the students to talk. I'm also aware I've got a large number of students, so it's quite hard always to see how it's impacting them. So I do try my best to, as I said before, have enough breaks, have time for them to kind of turn to their friends and have a little chat about the content as well. 2 hours can be rather long. I never used to think it was until I was pregnant, and now standing for 2 hours pregnant giving lectures, I realised 2 hours is actually quite long. So yeah, again, I used to just give one break in between the 2 sections of the lecture, but I do a little bit more now and find that kind of captures their attention a bit better. I think about how I can make it interactive and engaging. So I'm not really one for putting students on the spot, but I certainly like them to contribute. So I think about how can I get them to do that in a way that they can remain anonymous and still feel that they've given their voice to the topic. So I'll give you some examples shortly. I've talked about different learning styles that I consider, and also how we can apply psychology to the real world. So Padlet for me is just brilliant. If you've not used it before, it's essentially a software that allows students to post. It's almost like little post-its, little virtual post-its onto a notice board. So we've got a license at Brighton. I'll ask later if you guys have access to it. It's so easy to use. It's literally just like posting something. So what the lecturer can do is have a QR code on the screen or a link. The students access it, and then I will ask a specific question and they will write an anonymous response. The fact that it's anonymous means students feel more comfortable and there's no pressure to talk. It then creates this really lovely collaborative board of all the students' sort of thoughts and interactions. It can generate really good discussion points, and also it can be used if, say, I have a guest speaker. So I often bring police officers into my course to speak to the students. So I can ask the students, please put questions up for this police officer, and then I do the facilitating, make sure the questions are appropriate. So for me, Padlet is just a no-brainer. It's such an easy way to get the students involved, but in a way that's not kind of anxiety provoking, and in a way they don't have to put their name up. I do set ground rules. I do say don't post anything inappropriate. Just be mindful other people can read the comments. So here's an example here. So this is Chief Superintendent Rachel Carr. So she is the head of Sussex Police. And she's been coming to speak to my students since she was, I think, a detective inspector. So we've kind of seen her progress. So she's done incredibly well career-wise. So I'm not sure how clear it is on the slide. Apologies if it's not, but this is a Padlet here. So as I've got at the top, questions for Rachel. and then the students will put questions up, and basically I'll be at the computer and I'll just be monitoring the questions that are coming through. What I'll do is I tend to click on the stars when the question's been answered so I can remember which one has. And then you can also kind of combine questions. So if people are asking similar sorts of things, we can kind of put them into blocks. And that's just a really good way for basically me to see in advance what's being asked, just to make sure, because of the nature of the topic, it's not inappropriate. But also Rachel can take this Padlet away with her, and anything she doesn't answer, she can answer in her own time. So it just works really well as a kind of Q&A facilitator. And the students love her as well. So in terms of seminars, so just moving on quickly, I'm considering sensitive topics. The good thing is seminars are obviously smaller groups. So at Brighton, we will do a 2-hour lecture and then we'll have a 1-hour seminar. I can often find the classroom uninspiring. I think it's down to the luck of the draw with room bookings sometimes. So I always think, is there a way we can take the teaching outside of the classroom? Also, I know some people love group work and some students absolutely hate it. So I try and get a nice balance between that. I really, as part of my student engagement lead role, we are trying to find ways for attendance and engagement amongst students with classes. So we find sometimes seminars, as the year goes on, the attendance starts to dip. So it's something that I take into consideration. And also we focus a lot on assessment support, and what we try to do is think about the anxiety around assessments and how we can help with that. So to make seminars sound a little bit more exciting, I decided to call them security missions. And one of my other modules called forensic security, which is a forensic psychology module, but it looks more at things like risk assessment, CCTV, hostage negotiation, body-worn video cameras, etc. And for this seminar, what I do is I ask the students basically to go out onto campus and do a forensic risk assessment. So what that essentially is they'd be looking at campus for anything that's a hazard or potentially anywhere where a crime could take place. We use Padlet again. I'm going to drive you all mad going on about Padlet today, but it's just so effective. So anyone who's got a smartphone who's listening to me, you can scan that QR code and have a look at the Padlet that my students created this year. And in the Q&A at the end, I can go back to it and show you if you don't want to look at it right now. So what I do on the Padlet is I have a selection of questions for the students. They go out into the real world and then they answer the questions in their groups. And what that creates is this lovely sort of collaborative notice board of this task that I set them. And then in the seminar the following week, we'll go through the Padlet. I don't know if that's working or not, if anyone scanned the Q. Yeah, can you see it okay? Have you got access? Okay, great. So you should see, yeah, fantastic. You should see some hazards, some security guards. You should see little notes about crimes that take place. So what we do is we come back the following week and we go through that Padlet to see what the students found. So it's just taking something that you could, you could do in the classroom, sort of abstractly thinking about it, but them actually physically going out and doing it, it just seems to have more of an impact, and it's, I think, more engaging. So that worked really well. I'm happy, like I say, to go back to the Padlet at the end of the talk and talk you through some more of it. And then, as I said at the start, one of the things we do for our final year students is we ask them to become jurors. And this is because the SE question for this is critically evaluate the role of juries in criminal trials. So we want them to see how complex it is to deliberate in a group, to look through complex evidence, and they just really enjoy doing it. Now, the only way to make this work is to send out material in advance. So we've only got an hour. Most juries deliberate for a couple of days, so I send them lots of material in advance. So I send them sort of court material that we've made up. We get them to kind of read that in advance so that they're spending most of the seminar deliberating with the other people in the room. So we do that. Here's all the sort of materials. So there's like court transcripts, pathology report. They get right into it. They become really quite engrossed in it. And then they will come back together in the groups and the teaching team will watch them deliberate, which is fantastic. So that's a really, really effective way of teaching. So just to kind of end this bit on teaching, my top tips, I love trying new things. Doesn't always work. I think the worst thing I tried once is I had a small rugby ball and I started throwing it out in lectures to get people to answer things, and I just realised that that was not very effective. But I always like to try new things. I like to try getting students out of the classroom, trying new technology like Padlet. At Brighton, we've got what we call a Learning and Teaching Hub and a Brighton Skills Hub. So that's professional staff who, can train us on how to use new things. You probably have an equivalent at your university. I love collaborating with students. So sometimes for me, it's just a case of asking students what works, what they enjoy doing, and what we should do more of. I'm very mindful of different learning styles, and I'm also mindful there's a lot of anxiety around assessments. So that's my teaching bit. Am I still okay to crack on time-wise? Yeah? Yep, good. Cool. Okay, so I'm moving on to research. So myself and my colleague, Catherine McConnell, who's actually head of the Brighton Skills Hub, we've always been really involved with student engagement and how we get students more engaged, not just with research, but how we can use that to sort of make decisions about things that are happening in the university. So one of the things we realised, and I don't know if this is the same at your university, but a lot of the time we get feedback from students is through surveys. So we give them loads and loads of surveys, or we ask course reps to feedback information. And I think that's fine to an extent, but for us, we wanted the students to really be involved in recognising things that needed improved at the uni, coming up with solutions, and then seeing those solutions implemented. I think that's just so important. And that's where we kind of developed this eduthon idea. So it is a play on hackathon. So if those of you who don't know what a hackathon is, it's traditionally associated with kind of computer programming. So it's where a group of people would come together and they would try and solve a problem or design something in a short period of time. But we realised promoting a hackathon gives probably a different idea of what we wanted to do. So we changed it to eduthon. So we got the sort of concept from some researchers at the University of Bristol who were doing a similar thing. And as the student engagement lead role came about a few years ago, we decided actually this is something really worth looking at. So how can we collaborate with our students to identify issues? I say issues, but identify things at the uni that could either be improved or, could be given more attention. This kind of came off the back of the COVID pandemic as well. So we were wanting to do a lot more in terms of engaging our students. So me and Catherine applied for external grant funding, which we successfully got, which was fantastic. So that was from Advanced Learning Development and HE. So it was a small scale grant, but still it was fantastic, and it was enough for us to fund the project. We got our ethics approved, and then we started promoting. So we basically promoted it and asked for students who wanted to be kind of change makers, who wanted to come along and really add value to the university and come up with solutions. I loved the idea of just collaborating with them and seeing what they would come up with. So that was the concept behind it. So we had staff and students working together. So me and Catherine had a few more staff working there. And we, like I say, identified factors that we thought needed more attention at the university. We then considered a whole range of possible solutions that were realistic. We thought about who we'd have to get involved in terms of stakeholders to make this happen. And we also planned for kind of outcomes and impacts as well. So the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to take it out of the classroom again. We didn't want to be sat in a lecture room or a seminar room. So we are lucky that we have, it's actually called the Venue, so it's part of the Brighton Students' Union, and it's a big kind of bar social space, but they've got side rooms that you can book. So we booked there, so it was a bit more creative. They had a TV screen that we could put our slides on, and more importantly for them, we had funding so we could feed them all day. So that was very, very successful. So the Edgeathon lasted 12 till 6, so it was 6 hours. It was a long period of time, but within that time they were able to go up, order food, drinks, you know, they could have as many breaks as they wanted. And we also used the funding to get creative materials. So this felt very much like going back to primary school. So we had everything from Lego to pipe cleaners, googly eyes, glitter, big project boards. And we wanted the students to kind of document their thinking and then coming up with their projects in a really kind of creative way. So all the students didn't know each other when they came along. So we had 3 groups of students, so 3 groups of about 4 to 6. So the icebreaker, I decided, right, get your smartphones, go and take a photograph of something either in the venue or outside the venue that represents you in some way, or your personality or something you're learning at uni. Put them all up on the Padlet. There's that word again. used a Padlet to document the day, and then that's how they introduced themselves. So that was a lovely way to get students to talk to each other. And then at the end of the day, we had a guest judge come along to basically give feedback on the student projects, which again worked really, really effectively. So again, there's a QR code there if you would like to have a look at how the day kind of turned out. It documents everything from the food that was eaten, the projects that were made, all the pitches the students gave were recorded and put up on the Padlet. One of our staff members created tote bags for the students, which was lovely. So it's just a really lovely creative space. Again, in the Q&A bit, I can go back to the Padlet and show you if you don't want to have a look now. But I think what it demonstrates all the stages the students went through to develop their project, from writing basic ideas on a bit of paper to creating these incredible kind of Lego storyboards. And we had got 3 projects out of this research. So the first project the students wanted to address was actually neurodiverse students and support for them. From that, we now have neurodiverse study skills groups across the university, and we are educating staff across the uni about the needs of neurodiverse students. So taking into consideration sort of lecture style, breaks, the type of content on the slides. The second project was all about AI and gamification, so how that can be used positively in teaching, and also the kind of concerns around it as well. And the third project was about peer mentoring support. So this is obviously students supporting other students, almost like a bit of a buddy system, which we used to have at Brighton. And then it went, and we're basically, what we're doing now is we're bringing it back. So we're piloting it in schools. So these 3 projects, the students came up with these ideas. That wasn't us. So they came up with these 3 incredible things that they thought needed more attention. They came up with realistic goals, and the university listened, and they're now implementing them. So it's just a fantastic methodology, and we're now writing a book chapter about it. Well, it'll be slightly delayed because I have to go off and have a baby, but my collaborator says she'll do a lot of the work while I'm doing that. So we're going to write a book chapter, and we're going to write a paper on it with the methodology. So if anyone is interested in that in the future, I can send that over. Also, the most important thing with this research is we had the students reflect on it throughout. So you can see from the feedback, I don't know how clear it is, apologies if it's not, but it is on the Padlet. So they loved the idea coming together, loved the Edgeathon, loved coming up with solutions that would be listened to. And this is the one that really got to us. Usually the only chance to change the teaching is through surveys, but that's just on topics. I've never had the chance to change how we learn, and that is great. So yeah, it was fantastic. And a few months after we did the Edgeathon work, we got accepted to present at the university's Education and Student Experience Conference. So we co-presented with the students. So the students were able to tell the university about the project, about the reflections. So not only did they take part in the research, they became kind of co-collaborators, and they were able to present at quite a big conference actually, which was quite daunting, but they got loads out of it. So that for us was a fantastic research project. It was sort of emphasises everything we love about student engagement, and it's something that we'll continue to do at the university. Sorry, I do talk loads, you probably noticed. I'll go into my third area now, which is the student engagement lead role. Okay, so here we have our student engagement team at the University of Brighton. Yes, we do like to socialise outside of the university. So yeah, every single school. So just how Brighton is structured, we have 6 schools. We used to have more, but we combined schools a couple of years ago. So each school has a student engagement lead, which is my role. So we are fully responsible for everything student engagement. So that could be from attendance and engagement policy to running events, to promoting the National Student Survey, to looking at wellbeing and cost of living crisis. I mean, the list goes on. If you see our job description, it's absolutely mad. But we cover all elements of it. We're an award-winning team. So earlier in the year, we won the Brilliant Colleague Team Award, which we were nominated by staff, which felt really special. So we were celebrating that. And there's more than 6 in the above photos. You can see we have what we call VIP members. So we've got people from the Student Skills Hub that join us. And our leader, our guide, is Dr. Jo McDonnell. So she is part of the Vice Chancellor's office. She's the Director for Student and Education. So she oversees all of our work. And she's just been absolutely fantastic at advocating for the role. So we are a really proactive, engaging team of academics who try to give consistent practice across each of our schools. We share a lot of what we're doing. We support each other. We also recognise challenges that we're having at the university. So at the moment, I would say the key challenges would be cost of living, attendance and engagement, sort of linked to all of that, mental health as well with our students. So I'd say they're the key things that are on our radar and we are trying our best to work through at the moment. So that's the lovely team. And then something that we started doing last year, we, as strong a team as we are, we suddenly realised we need to get some students working with us. We need to get students working alongside us. And so we developed this initiative called Student Engagement Partners. So every single student engagement lead has 2 students. The role is paid. So it's a paid role. The role, we interviewed, it was treated like a proper job, any job that you would go for. We advertised and interviewed, and when all the students were successful, we did a training day for them. We got them to do sort of EDI training. And what they do is they work closely with us on basically supporting their fellow students. Welcome Week is a big drive, so we do a lot of work with them in Welcome Week. We've got sort of these welcome desks where we give out biscuits and stress balls and we speak to the new students. My student engagement partners today, and then actually in about 20 minutes, are about to host a Halloween party. So that's exciting stuff. They do lots of wellbeing events for students. And the idea is that we've got students on the ground who are studying right now who can feed back to us in terms of what we can do to help to provide more engagement support. We were really interested in well applications from students from underrepresented groups. So for example, mature students, commuting, carers, neurodiverse, students from ethnic minorities, and also students who are the first in their family to attend university. So that that sort of underrepresented group, that makes up a lot of the students at Brighton University, and so we wanted to give them the opportunity. That lovely photo on the slide is our student engagement partners, and that is the very popular pink t-shirt that we all wore at Welcome Week. So yeah, they're absolutely brilliant at what they do. We couldn't do our job without them. Again, here's just some photos from Welcome Week. I always get really embarrassed looking at these because I look like a mum in the background wishing everybody well. But they create sort of nice challenges where students go off to find things around campus. And it's just a really good bonding exercise for our new students. Likewise, we put on psychology demos, as I've shown you previously, so the students get to try out all our different equipment. And if you're wondering why there's a cat there with a hat on, that is a robotic therapy cat, believe it or not, which is used for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. We call him Pigeon. He's our class mascot. And then this is just some reflections from our student engagement partners. So they love being able to facilitate opportunities for students. They love the fact that it's students, you know, doing things for students. It's that peer support again. They love making decisions. They love organising and promoting events. Because I'm a bit of a dinosaur, they create all of the social media content. So we've got Instagram and TikTok. It's not for me. I don't know enough about it, but they've created school pages, and this is where they promote events, they promote well-being, and they're very successful. Like a couple of slides to go, and then I will be quiet and let people ask questions. So the other initiative that we're doing at Brighton at the moment to help with student engagement is called Belong at Brighton Extra. So this essentially is a fund that supports activities that help students get that sense of belonging and engagement. So we started the fund after the COVID pandemic so that we could get students back engaging with their cohort. And the fund, unfortunately, the only downside, it is limited to undergrad students. And this is because it's aligned with our access and participation plans. So it is a shame, but we try and fund postgrad activities in other ways, but it's for undergraduate students across the university. And what the fund does is it allows members of staff to apply for money for things like taking students on trips or buying materials for an event. So if I just pop to the next slide, I've got some examples there. So yeah, last year we had over 100 bids. We last year had £25,000 as part of the fund. This year we have 35. So the university have seen the benefit of it through feedback from students and staff. What we tend to do is say to staff, look at about £15 per student. We give out vouchers for prizes. We tend to do the Brighton Student Union vouchers so that it's still putting money back into the work they're doing. We meet every 2 weeks to go through the bids, and our student engagement partners are invited along as well so that the students can give their feedback on the bids. So the sort of things that we do is we pay for admissions to museums or venues, tickets for events. We will pay for packed lunches. We'll pay for catering, prizes. We'll pay for guest speakers to come to speak to students or materials for creative projects. What we consider when looking at the bids is, first of all, the cost of living crisis. So any of the bids that come to us, we want to make sure the students don't put their hand in their pocket, basically. We don't want them to have to pay for anything, because for a lot of our students, it's just not possible. So when we suggest a trip to London, quite often it is trips to London that we do, that can be really off-putting for students because of cost. So we make sure the transport's free, we provide food, we pay for entry fees into anything that they're going to. So no student feels like they're going to miss out. That's the most important thing. We also we do things with large courses. So sometimes we will do events over multiple days. So say it's a psychology course, we would run 3 days of trips up to London so all students can get involved. We also think of accessibility needs, so in terms of mobility, but also the time of day that we do events. We do have a free coach service through the university, which is fantastic. And we also try and get courses which we deem are at risk. So this is identified through things like the National Student Survey to apply for these bids to really work on the engagement on the courses. There's a lot of employability and professional skills that come into play as well. So getting to meet peers, getting to meet curators or sort of people that the jobs that students could go into. Really, yeah, it's just fantastic in terms of seeing how they can apply their skills after university. So we got some really great feedback from the students there. And again, here's some more feedback. So well organised, very insightful. Feel like it really broke the ice, really fun and informative. Made everything less stressful, reminding me that I'm at university to make new memories while also getting my degree. So again, some brilliant feedback from the students on the trips. And then here's just a couple of photos from some of the events we did last year. This is my colleague, Sarah. This is the packed lunches. So she was quite delighted with those. Here's students on the coach. This is King's College London. So we took our psychology students to the museum there to show them brains in jars, essentially. So that was an interesting trip. We do quizzes. So here's the room, actually, we did the Edgeathon in. So that's the politics quiz. And then we do things like ice skating or going to see lights around Christmas as well. So there's a whole range of activities that we do. So I realise that is a lot to pack into a talk, and I realise the time as well, so I do apologise, but I really hope that that is giving you an insight of what we're doing at Brighton. And like I say, I'd be really happy to take questions on this. So I'll stop sharing my slides. Oh yeah, it's up here now. They keep changing. They keep changing. Okay, yeah.
Interesting and useful talk.
Thank
you mentioned lots of interesting stuff. So it was not, I'm not able to write all the notes.
Sorry, I know.
Information. Yeah, it was really useful. And I like that you mentioned the technology, using the technology and the Padlet. I used to use it before, and I don't know about other stuff. Some of them mentioned they asked to have account with the Padlet. It's really useful, and I like it for the shy student. They do not ask in the lecture, but for the Padlet is easy because anonymous and they can send their question. So thank you for reminding us about Padlet. Another thing that I see that you mentioned real life situation and the example to engage the student, which is very nice. I feel at the beginning of your presentation that you missed something important, and then I find it at the end, which is sense of belonging.
Yes.
Yeah, because without this, the student will not engage or interact with the staff.
Exactly. I think if there's any barriers to belonging, then that's it. Yeah, we failed at the first hurdle. So I think that's why we call all our initiatives Belong at Brighton. So yeah, yes, I should have mentioned that first, but yeah, we got there in the end.
And I like that you mentioned that you named the student as a change maker, and you help them to make their voice reach to the university and for all staff in the university.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any question from the staff? If you have a question, please raise your hand or just open your mic. Okay, Antonius?
Yeah, I just wonder, has the Padlet been used yet at Brunel? I'm very eager whether we can reuse it at Brunel.
Yes, so, I was just actually checking the Samira, if you want to answer, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't know, say it.
I was just going to mention, I was checking it while, Gemma, thank you so much for the talk, by the way. It was really interesting and insightful. I was just mentioning, we have the digital team where they describe what kind of tools they're available for us as lecturers. And there they actually provide that we have to email them and the request for an account for staff members. So best is just to email them. But there's a, for us, accessibility for Padlet as well as PULEF.
And the good thing about having a university license, it doesn't limit the amount of Padlets. So if you have just your own one, I think it's 5 you're limited to, and then you're like, oh no, I've got to delete all these lovely Padlets. So yeah. So yeah, it's really good to get a license if you can for the university. But I'll leave that with you guys to
Yes,
with that.
yeah, they have the account and they have the license, and we can have account with them. Okay, Antonius.
Thank you, Gemma. Very inspiring talk. I have two questions. One is, where does the student engagement team sit within the organization? Is it at departmental level within psychology, or is it more, broad? And what is it about? Is it like a support service that you offer? Is it to the students? Is it about welfare? Is it about all these things? Is it about the student experience in more generally? Because and how does it link like to one of the categories that are in the National Student Survey, for example? How does it fit into those metrics that you look into as a university? And the second question is about the eduthon. Usually hackathons, they have this either an employability sort of link, like come and get, or develop your skills, or interact with some employers that you invite. What was the motivation for students to participate in an eduthon, especially when the outcomes of that are likely to become available to future generations and not just the students who participate at that particular moment? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Right, I'll go with the first one. So it is a university-wide leadership role. So the way it works is we've got obviously senior management, and then each school has what we call student engagement leadership roles. So there's my role, which is student engagement lead. Then we've got learning and teaching lead. We've got an inclusive practice lead. We've got an employability lead. So we have one of each of those leads in each school, and we are managed by, I think I mentioned at the talk, Joel McDonnell, who is the Director of Education and Students. So it's not just for psychology, I'm the student engagement lead for the whole of the School of Humanities and Social Science. Our role, we get 550 hours for the role, so it has grown. We started with, I think, 200, so it's become quite a significant leadership role. What we do is we meet, so all the roles I just said, we meet with our Associate Dean of the School of Education and Student Experience, and what we do, we meet every month to come up with ways of improving the student experience, not just in the school, but across the university. Our main responsibilities are student engagement and attendance, well-being, cost of living. Oh God, the list will go on. Anything linked to student engagement. The other thing we do, which is a big thing, we've got learning support plans. So these are for students with any needs that they need support with. We review those. And I think probably the number one thing of our role, we support the course leaders in our school. So we disseminate information, we help them with Welcome Week, and then we help promote the National Student Survey. How we're linked to the questions and metrics and that, predominantly through student voice. That's our main one that we focus on. So giving the students that opportunity to tell us what they need and what they want. But all those NSS metrics feed into student engagement. So we do a lot of work around areas that are in the red and we need to work on. I don't know, does that answer your first question okay? Yeah, and then the Eduthon question, I'm just trying to remember what you asked. Oh, so in terms of how we got students involved in their motivation, well, we presented it as, do you want to come along? Do you want to make change to the university? And we used this term change makers. And we used the sort of creative coming together, working with staff and making a difference. And we really meant that. Any project that they were going to come up with, we were going to take it forward in some way, in some realistic way. And they've seen it. They've seen it because they've seen each stage and they've seen the university take it seriously. You probably guess I'm quite vocal and I really push for the students to be heard, and that's what everyone does in that team. And I think the students now then go to the rest of their cohorts and say they did actually do something about this, and they listened to us and they listened to our voices. And that was the difference. So it wasn't just come along, say some ideas, and then we'll see what happens. It was, you're actually going to make a change. You're going to improve university life, not just for yourselves, but for the incoming cohorts and the incoming challenges that they face every day. And I think they felt quite empowered by doing that.
Thank you, Gemma. Federica?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
And thank you, Gemma. It's been a very interesting presentation. I used Padlet a couple of times and I did love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. I have a question for you regarding how to reach groups of students. Have you ever had any groups of students that have been more difficult to engage or even to reach sometimes? And if so, what have you done?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I think the students we have the biggest challenge with at the moment, we call them repeating students. I don't know if you use the same terminology, but students who...
We use it.
Yeah, the same, great. So students who have either intermitted or they're repeating modules from the previous year. We've tried to put on sort of specific support groups or study skills for them. We've tried to reach them directly, and the engagement is quite difficult with that cohort. So we're always trying different ways to try and reach out. The number one thing they told us is they don't like being called repeating students. So that's a kind of a starting point. They don't actually like that terminology at all. So it's hard when you've got a group of students. Sometimes the exam board says they don't have to attend, but they have to complete work, so they don't feel motivated coming into uni. Then they don't have the social side, they don't have that engagement of their peers. So I would definitely say that is probably one of our biggest challenges in terms of some students. And then I think the other group would be students who either commute or have caring responsibilities outside of university, where they have to make quite difficult decisions, like they have this week. It's half term here at the moment, and they have to choose, it's too expensive for childcare, so we're not going to be able to attend our classes. I mean, we do record our lectures, we've got lecture capture policy, but I'd say they're the two groups at the moment where we struggle. And like I say, we're trying to try different initiatives to get them on board. So in terms of cost of living, we have pantries across the university. They're a bit like food banks, so we're providing essential resources for students. We're giving out lunch vouchers if people are really struggling financially. And we now have a new teaching postponement policy where we give students enough time if something's going to be cancelled or rescheduled, so they're not paying £20+ to come onto campus to find out something's been cancelled, because that is just absolutely ineffective. So I'd say that's the main things that we're doing with the more challenging, students that are more challenging to reach. Yeah, great question, Phil.
Thank you. It's very useful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Okay, so I would like now to thank Gemma for her.
There's one more, I think.
Okay, so Diana, you can open your mic and ask.
Thank you. Thanks again. I was just wondering, you mentioned about this assessment support session focusing on anxiety. How are these sessions are organized, or what kind of specific activities do you do in order to overcome or assist them with anxiety? Thank you.
Yeah. No, pleasure. And it's something that we've been really working hard at. We discovered that it's not just about the assessment support, it's actually, given that guidance that they don't get overwhelmed by it. So we put additional kind of support sessions on, and we do it in collaboration with our Brighton Skills Hub. So it's not just the lecturers, it's our professional staff that come and help. So we've got, like I say, specific groups for neurodiverse students, for mature students. We've even got, so in psychology, we teach research methods and statistics, which is a bit of a Marmite subject for our students. So we even put on specific workshops around statistics to make it not sound scary. So we call it like the pop-in, drop-in sessions, so they can come along. And what we try and do is we talk them through our marking criteria, what we're after, And we just give them that bit of outlet to go, right, what is it? What's the crux of what's making you anxious about this? Is it just the fact that you don't like the topic? Is it the style of the assessment? So we try to incorporate not just standard essay bound assessments or just exam. We try and do things that are a little bit more creative that students are more comfortable with. So like I say, getting them out of the classroom and doing sort of different styles of assessment. So we ask them what works for you. We've got a lot of students with sort of BTEC backgrounds. So they're coming from vocational degrees where they have never sat an exam ever. And I think sometimes we forget that. We kind of go, right, you know, you've got this exam at the end of this semester, and they go, I've never done an exam, what do I do? And then we put them in this horrendous gym hall, you know. I still think that's terrifying. It still scares me, you know, decades later after being a student. It still scares me, that thought of that exam hall and the invigilators. So I think what we do is we try and match students with different skills. So a student who's done exams to someone who's not, but BTEC students do a lot of project work, a lot of group work, a lot of really creative, insightful things. And we get them to come together and share their skills and actually tell them it's not as daunting as it sounds. So that's what we do. Again, we do a lot of, I've realised now, we do a hell of a lot more peer support than I realised. And I think they like hearing it. Sometimes they hear it from us, they're like, yeah, of course you're going to say that. But if they hear it from a student, it's way more effective. So that's the sort of things we're doing with assessment, anxiety and support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any final question? Okay, let's close the session now by thanking Gemma for this interesting talk. And you spent 1 hour presenting and answering all the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So I'll stop the recording now, and I will share everything with you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.